Yes, guys, what's happening? And welcome back to the channel and welcome to tonight's live stream previewing Manchester City against Chelsea. Big clash of the weekend tomorrow lunchtime as we head to the Etihad, looking to close that 10-point gap at the top of the Premier League table. And joining me to discuss this, I've got two great guests as always. George, pleasure as always to be with you again, mate. And I've got Nick from That Chelsea Podcast joining the channel again. So Nick, thanks for your time as always, mate. Great to have you on board for the show tonight. Boys, before we get into the Man City game, hope you're both well. Want to go for a bit of a quick update on transfers. Never seems to be a dull day at Chelsea. It's well known that we are in desperate need of some cover at wing back. I mean, ideally both sides, but definitely on the left-hand side. In the last few days, we've been chasing to recall Emerson. Lyon have rejected our compensation fee, €4 million, about £3.3 million, turned down three approaches from us, and Peter Bosch, the Lyon manager, has come out today saying that Emerson will be staying with the club for the rest of the season. Nick, I'll come to you first. First off, do you believe that to be true? Do you think that this is dead and buried now, this Emerson thing, or do you think there could be one final twist in the tail?
Look, I don't know. I think if the manager's said it I guess it depends how he said it. If he said with certainty, then you might think it's dead in the water. It seems we're in a tough situation anyway. So I'd say there's a chance that it might be dead and buried, which is, is a shame. But I guess we've kind of got our, selves to blame for being in the position we're in, with all this, trying to, call back Emerson at the last minute. It's not quite maybe gone to plan. I don't know. It's not the end of the world, but just not ideal.
Do you feel that that was the right choice to go for in terms of exploring bringing him back rather than spending the £25 million on Luca Digne, which Aston Villa have gone undone? Do you feel that recalling Emerson was the correct path for the club to go down?
Look, if it seems like that was Tuchel's preferred path, so that's fine by me. At the end of the day, as long as Tuchel's getting what he wants, that's fine by me. There were pros and cons to it. If you said if we signed Digne, was it was more than likely we'd have to end up buying him, and then that creates a problem. Not this season, but then next season being stuck, with left backs, and wing backs on the books. So there was no real ideal solution. The ideal solution was a loan, but we know how hard that was going to be. So I'm not too fussed. If Tuchel wanted Emerson, so I'd quite like Emerson to come back, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really bother me too much. I guess we've just got to work with what we've got.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, hopefully, sources are saying that Chelsea have got a plan B, so it'd be nice to see the club crack on with that. And my understanding from things that I've read is that the club want to back Tuchel with a new signing, whether it's on loan or most likely to be on loan. So they are obviously exploring those options. I mean, George, what are your thoughts, mate, on obviously ultimately seemingly not being able to recall Emerson and kind of being back at square one again with our quest for a new left back?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation, isn't it? Because you're searching for someone who, ideally, in the long term, isn't going to be a huge part of the club. As much as you'd like to say, we've got Ben Chilwell as our first choice, and similar to goalkeeping situation, isn't it? It's difficult to have a conversation with someone that you want to bring in and say, well, they would have to give them a lot of, I don't know. You'd almost have to wing it because you're not giving them a first team selection. You're basically promising them that you can be in there for the short term, but you're ideally just an emergency cover for what we've got already. So it's not an ideal situation. I agree with the points that were made. I think I was probably happy with exploring bringing him back on loan. I thought that was the best option. I don't think buying someone on a permanent deal was suitable at this point. I think January is always a difficult window anyway. And I like Alonso, and I think we've obviously got the young lad who played in the FA Cup who was brilliant as well, that I think could have done a job as well and give him a bit of a chance. I know it's a big step up going into Premier League, but there might be some other twists and turns. But it is a very difficult situation for Chelsea to be in, and we've just got to crack on.
I mean, it seems like the club are kind of reluctant to do permanent business in January. I can kind of understand that it's a difficult market to operate in, and the chances of making a permanent signing that is going to fit what the club want going forward is going to be quite difficult to do. But I do believe that, if the right deal presented itself, they might be tempted to go into the market permanently. But Nick, what are your thoughts on this? Another player that's doing the rounds, Serginho Dest of Barcelona. understand that according to sources like Fabrizio Romano, etc., he is on the Chelsea list. I think he appeals because, one, he's at that age profile, early 20s. There is resale value there. And there is also the fact that he can play both sides, which obviously is going to appeal to Chelsea whilst Reece James is still out injured as well. The stance on Dest has slightly changed, though, having initially thought it would be a permanent deal only for Barcelona to entertain. It's now emerging that they would be prepared to accept a loan deal. Now, Chelsea should really be acting on this. If Tuchel's interested in the player, if it's someone they're looking at, then we should be getting it done. We don't want to be falling behind the likes of potentially Bayern Munich, Atletico Madrid, and those other unnamed Premier League clubs. I mean, Dest was left out of the Clásico in the Spanish Super Cup the other night, or left out of the squad. Nick, do you know much about Serginho Dest, and do you feel that he's a player that you'd like to see come to Chelsea?
Oh, look, I don't watch a huge amount of Barcelona. I don't really watch a huge amount of La Liga. Look, Dest, from like what I've heard and what I've talked to people and people who've like watched him, US men's national team sort of fans, like obviously, I guess what works is he could cover both left and right wing back, which is an obvious perk, kind of helps us there, because we do kind of need both positions aided there. He's young, so while there's clearly there are some flaws in his game, you'd like to think a coach as brilliant as Tuchel could work with him and help him become a really good the best version of himself, which we could then profit from later on. Look, Dest, it's one of those, I'm not too fussed. I don't know a huge amount about him, so I'm not going to go like crazy if we don't sign him. But if Tuchel wants him, then I trust Tuchel's judgment. And if it's a loan, then it's pretty low risk. If it's an option to buy, then we just see how he does and go from there. And he's a decent young promising player there that we can hopefully work on and build up. And said we need depth in the wing back position. Even if he's maybe not ready to be a starter like for us immediately, it's fine, because if he can be a future investment, that can also be good for us.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, George, you got anything to add on Serginho Dest? I mean, obviously, as we've touched on, the age profile appeals, loan with no obligation to buy, possibly an option to buy. See how he does. It would be relatively low risk, as Nick said, and with a loan deal, even if it doesn't work out, ultimately he would provide some cover, and he could probably do a job for 6 months. So is that something that you think the club should be cracking on with? And obviously Barcelona, with their financial issues as well, looking to get players off the books or just wages off the books as well. So it would be a fairly easy deal to complete, you'd imagine, if the club have got concrete interest to follow up on him.
Yeah, I believe so, and I think Nick hit the nail on the head there. I think his versatility was one thing that I think Chelsea were looking at, because we do have problems coming up in both areas with the age. And then you look at the loan deal. It seems to work for all parties. It seems to tick a lot of boxes, and I think it makes more sense in terms of a project and something that we can invest in. That's, like Nick said, very low risk, in the sense that if he does well at Chelsea, then great. If not, we can do similar to what I'm sure we're going to do with Saul, which is ship him on. So I would, if I was Thomas Tuchel, if I was in charge of that decision, I'd probably be looking down that avenue more than any other. But I mean, like Nick said, we can't really go against Thomas Tuchel. So if that's the avenue that he wants to go down, then I back him all the way.
Yeah, and just to round out the little transfer section, boys, I think some news that probably took a lot of Chelsea fans by surprise was the recalling of Kennedy from Flamengo last night. I mean, for me, that's probably an insurance choice. Who can we recall from loan that if we actually can't get anyone in, we could potentially get by with this guy? I mean, Nick, what are your thoughts on Kennedy being recalled? And do you realistically think that he has got an opportunity in the last 6 months of this season? I mean, Tuchel was a little bit coy when he was asked about it. He said in the press today, Kennedy is back. It's a huge opportunity to make his mark on this team. We cannot say that Kennedy is the solution, though. So a little bit of a double-edged sword from him there, an opportunity for him, but then also going on to say that he's not really the solution. So he's not giving too much away. I mean, I would look at it as we've called him back in an emergency, that if we don't get anyone in, we'll just have to use him. But if we do get someone in, we're just going to ship him onto a different loan. I mean, what have you made of Kennedy being recalled?
Yeah, I guess that's probably how we'd see it. Like initially yesterday, that was like when we, heard the news, it was like, oh, he's just getting recalled. He's going somewhere else on loan. And then obviously we've seen that might not necessarily be the case just yet. Look, Ken Kennedy's just, it's quite weird, quite hard to sort of talk about Kennedy. It feels a bit weird that, about 5 years ago, or whatever, it was 6 years ago, he's playing, Champions League knockout tie for us as a left wing back, against PSG or whatever. And now we're talking about him, going back and playing in sort of a similar-ish type role 6 years on for a player that is just, for whatever he seemed to have a lot of potential, flat to deceive, attitude issues, etc. A bit, maybe a bit of a party boy, just didn't really work, never really got an opportunity at Chelsea, wasn't really, I guess, quality, didn't really excel on loan. He's just an odd one. It's just one of those players, like, he's in the squad, let's just see what we can do. He obviously, Conte tried him a bit at the start, 17, 18, when he came back, he was, played some of the cup games at wing back, I guess. It just, again, gives, an option, even if it's not league games, he starts his cup games. We've seen Malang Sarr, he's played cup games for us, and we might even be at a stage now with Malang Sarr where we've got confidence about him coming into Premier League games for us. He's obviously done a job in the cups for us. And maybe with Kennedy, who knows, he just starts off in the cups, low risk opponents can just, get some confidence in performance. Then maybe, who knows, we get to a point where we feel happy to maybe give him the odd Premier League game. But it feels to me like an insurance option. We've got someone who can play, some of the cup games needed. Who knows what the situation will be like. Maybe he'll be trusted, some club World Cup games, we'll have to see. Yeah. Just one of those, just see how it goes. You're in the squad for now. We'll just sort of reassess and then, just see what happens. It just, again, a fairly low risk option, providing he doesn't have to start playing like regular football. Say, as providing Alonso stays fit and healthy, it seems a fairly low risk option that we can assess, later on if we are able to land someone in January.
I mean, it's mad. The guy, he's still only 25. He seems like he's been with us for years. But he's been on loan all over the place. I think he's hardly made any appearances for the club. But I mean, George, do you agree kind of with what Nick's saying? Kind of like it's just an insurance option in case the worst case happens and no one comes in. I suppose it's kind of a smart thing to do, really.
Oh, definitely. And if you look at it, lads, this could potentially be our longest ever season if you tie in the Super Cup, the World Club Championships, going obviously to the final of the League Cup as well, and we're still in FA Cup Champions League. So I think he's just doing insurance in numbers, going down that list and thinking, I need someone who's available in case, for just those games where potentially we need extra numbers in positions. So yeah, I agree with that. And it's going to be a long season. And at the moment, with all the COVID trouble and injuries, we need as many numbers as we can. So he's not the solution. Let's be honest. We need numbers, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. I mean, obviously the window's probably still got a couple of weeks to run just over, so hopefully we'll get some further developments on incomings at Chelsea in the coming days and next week. But yeah, it's just a little bit of a roundup of the transfers. And moving on to the big game tomorrow, then, boys. We're 10 points behind Manchester City in second place in the table. I think most Chelsea fans are accepting the league's not going to happen this season, bar an absolute miracle. A win tomorrow takes us within 7 points. It still doesn't change anything for me, to be perfectly honest. We're not. I can't see Man City dropping that many points and us picking up maximum points. Possibly for the remainder of the season. It's just not going to happen. We've had a good record against Manchester City under Thomas Tuchel. Obviously, we won the FA Cup semi-final. We won the Champions League final, and we also won the fixture at the Etihad as well with the Marcus Alonso stoppage time winner last season. Obviously, City came to the bridge earlier this season and beat us 1-0. They did comprehensively outplay us. I mean, Thomas Tuchel has said today that he subsequently got those tactics completely wrong in that game. So, Nick, I presume then we're not going to see a 3-5-2 tomorrow, because that's what was deployed against City. We saw the Werner and Lukaku link up for the first time, and it just didn't really work. What are you expecting tomorrow formation-wise? Because obviously with Andreas Christensen out with a positive COVID case, there has been talk of potentially the 4-2-2 formation continuing. Before you answer what formation you think we're going to go with, what have you made of the 4-2-2? I mean, we've seen it twice in both legs against Tottenham. It's looked good. I think it's obviously very much been a needs-must situation with personnel available. But do you like it?
It's looked good, but I'm just slightly wary of the fact that, well, you've got to remember we played, well, certainly against Spurs in that first leg, a very passive Spurs. Like that kind of took me back to watch. That made me realise, like, oh, well, we actually like that under Conte in the second half of 17-18 at points. Was that what it was like watching us? I didn't quite realise maybe it was that bad. Yeah, look, it was untested. I think Spurs, it's tough because also I think before 2-2, we've not necessarily been like entirely full strength. We've had some Malang Sarr playing in that position, etc. Like I think at times, especially in that second leg as well, we got a bit sloppy in the second half. We did get a bit complacent. We did let Spurs have some opportunities. I'm not sure it's like the solution, but it's been nice to see that we have another option, an option that Tuchel was able to go to, at the last minute, that he was able to implement against a decent side that have still got some decent players, and was able to convincingly get us through to a final. So I guess that's encouraging, but it is also a question of if we are slightly sloppy like we were in the second leg in that second half against Spurs, City will punish us. And that's, I guess, maybe the slight concern with the formation. But it's, again, it's interesting. But yeah, we obviously can't play three in midfield against City. I think, Tuchel was maybe slightly drawn into what he'd seen, the previous weekend with that Spurs second half where he took Mount off, Kante came on, we had three in midfield, and we absolutely bossed them and dominated. But against City, it just didn't work. City completely outplayed us. We struggled. And look, tomorrow formation-wise, I don't really know what's the ideal solution, because without Reece and Chile, I think we'll struggle. I think it could, unfortunately, be a very similar type game to what we saw at Stamford earlier in the season, where, Reece went off in that. We ended up with Azpilicueta and Alonso as wing-backs, and we still struggled to get out. We couldn't really play our game. And, Rom didn't really was isolated. Werner tried, but, was pretty ineffective. There is a slight worry that maybe it could be a bit like that tomorrow, which is why, maybe it's telling that Kai Havertz didn't play at all against Spurs midweek and Romelu Lukaku got the full 90 minutes. Maybe he'll, Rom might not feature tomorrow. We'll have to see. But yeah, formation-wise, 4-2 has looked good, against Spurs. It's something I'd be happy to see in the cups, the FA Cup against Plymouth, etc. Something I have confidence in, to utilise against like certain teams. But against City, I'd still probably prefer us to try and test it free at the back.
Yeah, no, I agree. I wouldn't feel comfortable playing a back four against Manchester City, particularly with Marcus Alonso playing at left back in a flat four. That just doesn't work for me. So, I wouldn't rule out seeing it. I have enjoyed it, but I feel that if we're going to, implement this formation change in the long run, Tuchel will probably want a full pre-season with it and to bring in some extra players to help complement with that system. But as you said, Nick, it's great to have another string to our bow that we can mix things up during certain games if it's required. George, obviously, the mistake last time with the 3-5-2. How different do you think tomorrow's game is going to be from the reverse back in August or September, I think it was? What are you expecting to be different, if anything? We were going to have to go with a slightly different approach, of course, but missing our first choice wing backs, who we're so reliant on in terms of contributing to the attacking phases of our game, it could be a difficult afternoon again tomorrow.
It's always going to be difficult against Manchester City because of the way that they play. They keep the ball so well. I think we went into that game that we watched at Stamford Bridge where we were a tad arrogant because of the head-to-head that we had recently, and thought we probably could mix it with them in midfield. And like Nick said, we got dominated, and it still is probably the worst performance we've seen this season in terms of Chelsea getting absolutely bossed. So it is going to be difficult tomorrow. But I almost think we've got a little bit more hope tomorrow, just because I don't think there's much to play for. And I think when Chelsea are almost not under pressure, and maybe City take this one a bit for granted because they've got such a big points gap, I think that's where there could be some danger. So I think Chelsea can express themselves a bit more, which is why I'd actually not disagree, but I'd actually like to see, and I would encourage the formation change just to throw things in the mix a bit and trial it against. Like we said, I think Nick brought up a really good point that we've changed the formation to adapt to cup games, and probably because needs must at the moment that we've had to change it because of injuries. But it would be nice to trial it against a team where it really would be tested. I don't think it's been tested yet. We've played it in the odd cup game against non-league opposition and Spurs that we made comfortable. So I would like to see just how it goes, and we haven't really got that much to lose. I still think we're going to finish in the top four, which is the priority now. And maybe it does offer a curveball to Manchester City in the thinking, in the preparation for it. So could be a car crash, but we've had it before. I think we've lost 6-0 there before, and we do forget about those moments. But anyone can get blown apart by Manchester City, so there's less on this game. So I think it's a good opportunity to maybe trial some of this, but whether he does that or not is another question.
Nick, is there any concern on your behalf that if we were to lose tomorrow, that we could be being dragged into a battle to finish in the top four potentially? Obviously, I'm not saying that the sides are below us, the likes of your Arsenals, potentially your Tottenhams, Man United, etc., are better than us, but the points gap is not that big. So if we were to lose tomorrow, are you concerned that we could be being dragged into an unwanted battle for the top four? Do you think actually realistically, we kind of got too much?
Look, there's obviously got to be a slight concern. You just look at our performances in league campaigns previous years to know that we've been involved in the top four battle. We are only 6 points clear of West Ham at the moment. We lose tomorrow, and I don't know who West Ham are playing, or if they've got a game, they could then maybe go 3 points behind us. And ultimately, we don't want to be dragged into it. That's the main thing. Like, if we lose tomorrow, which won't be a shock, then it just puts that bit more pressure on us in upcoming games. We then have to go. I mean, Brighton away midweek. We have to win. Spurs at home, we should be winning. But it means if we go to City and we can get a point, then it's not just a point for top four. It's also a statement that goes like, yeah, okay, we're doing okay. It's why Liverpool at the start of January, that felt big not to lose that. Because if we'd lost that Liverpool game, then we'd be going into City under pressure. And then if we'd lost City, that'd be 2 losses in a row. And that top four position would look a bit more shaky. I think we should be fine for top four. We've got the quality. When we get players, when Reece comes back, I think that would have an impact. Kante's, fingers crossed, hopefully, back fit for a bit now. So I think we should be okay for top four. I'm not really overly worried, but obviously, lose tomorrow. And it does make top four that bit interesting. And again, it just goes back to, our league form has been shaky for a while now. I don't think we've won consecutive games since the end of October or something like that. While City have been on about an 11-game winning run or whatever. So it does kind of show like the gulf between the two sides in that aspect. So ideally, we get a positive, some form of positive result, something to take away from the Etihad tomorrow, just to keep sort of that little bit of momentum going. Because I think in January, we sort of seem to so far have recovered from our December slump. We've put in good performances. The atmosphere around the club seems a lot better. So if we can just get, continue that against City, and then we can end, January really strong. Because I also think, when we go away to the Club World Cup and we won't play and we'll have games, we don't want to sort of be in a position when we come back and go, oh, we don't have much of a gap over the rest, or maybe we're even outside the top four with games in hand. We don't want to really be in that position. So yeah, look, tomorrow is just say if we can get, get a point, happy with that. But yeah, it's not the end of the world if we lose, because we know we're playing a top side. It's nothing to really go over the top, unless we are just absolutely awful. That would be the only reason to be really, really worried. But no, I don't think tomorrow really defines the season much. But obviously, if we can get some form of positive result, if we get a win, then you'd like to think that would, kick us on for the rest of the season. We'd comfortably finish top four.
Yeah, no, 100%. As I said, there's always a danger of being dragged into that battle, considering things are getting a little bit tighter behind us, and you don't want to be losing too many more games. George, what do you think we're going to have to do tomorrow to get something at the Etihad? I mean, we've seen the blueprint in previous games. You've been very much kind of soaked up pressure, counter-attacking football. Timo Werner's been utilised against Manchester City with that pace in behind a seemingly high line. I mean, Pep's probably wised up to that a little bit now. I'd expect he'll play a holding midfielder after the debacle of the Champions League final. Do you think we're going to have to try and do something a little bit different tomorrow? Because Pep is kind of going to know what we do. Do you think we almost need to reinvent ourselves a little bit and perhaps change just, looking to play on the counter-attack?
I mean, fundamentally, it always comes down to the same things when you play top opposition like Manchester City. You're going to need an element of luck because they're going to create lots of chances. You're going to need a goalkeeper who's going to make crucial saves. And we're going to have to be clinical, which we haven't been this season. But we're going to have to take our chances when we get on the counter-attack. I think counter-attack's probably the only way you can play against Manchester City, just because they force it. I mean, they usually have 60, 70% possession for most games, particularly when they're at home. They are suspect at the back. They do get complacent. They do make mistakes. And because they play out the back as well, they're obviously prone for error as well, which we've seen. And we quite like the matchup against Manchester City. I know the game at home wasn't particularly great. But before that, we've got a great record against them home and away. So again, I think because there's less on this game, because we almost accept the title's over now, I think Chelsea can go and express themselves a bit more. And that's what I want to see. I don't want to see us playing 10 behind the ball. Yes, in periods of the game, that is going to be the case. Like Tuchel always says, there are moments in games where you have to suffer. And he uses that word. He emphasizes on the word suffer, and you just have to accept that you've got to be patient. But when we do get the ball, we just need to be decisive. So again, interesting whether he's going to go with Lukaku, Havertz, what he's going to do. But I hope it's going to be a good game. I don't want it to be a boring lunchtime game. I really hope it's not. I hope Chelsea go for it. But like Nick said, I'm not surprised at all if we lose tomorrow. I mean, we're playing the best team in the world currently. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point. I mean, look, we don't go into many games expecting not to win, but I think we'd probably be in acceptance that this is one game when you go to the Etihad, despite our pretty good record there, that you feel that if you can get something from this game, that it's going to work out really well for us. Right, lads, we're going to move into picking our lineup. So I've got it up here as a 3 at the back. I think we probably will go with that. Considering we probably have got enough personnel available to roll with it. But, I mean, who knows? I mean, at certain points in the game, we could see it switch. Pretty obvious who's going to start in goal. It's going to be Kepa. Nick, what have you made of kind of almost the rebirth of Kepa since Thomas Tuchel was kind of taken over? He's put in some really good performances, obviously clean sheets against Spurs in both legs. What have you made of it, of his resurgence, really?
Yeah, look, I think with Kepa, we've got to remember he's probably not been up against the strongest opposition the whole time. There is that caveat. He's not been going up against top attacks, but he's come in and he's not let us down. I don't think you can really say since Tuchel's come in, pinpoint a game where he's let us down or made a really, really big error. Maybe the Southampton Cup game, he was a bit poor for their goal, but then he redeemed himself later on with some big saves and man obviously helped us win the shootout. Look, he's looks a different player. He's certainly a lot more confident. The fans have confidence in him. There's not that sense of nervousness any time the opponent shoots on our goal, or certainly not as much. There's not a nervousness when he's in the team starting games for us. So look, credit to Tuchel, he's managed Kepa really well. And it's getting to got to a point where maybe Tuchel and the club think actually Kepa in the future could maybe be number one for us. We don't know. We'd have to wait and see. But yeah, no, I've got full faith in Kepa. It's obviously tomorrow's not going to be easy against Manchester City. I imagine his goal will be peppered quite a bit. But you've got faith in him, confidence in him that he can do a job because he's shown himself to be a very good keeper for us this season.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said there, mate. To be honest, he has really stepped up, and as he hasn't let us down. Then I still think there's potential for him to be a number one at Chelsea at some point in his career. Obviously, Mendy's the current number one, a top keeper as well. But I think we're blessed again to have two really good goalkeepers. Like we had when we had Cech and Courtois, we had Cech and Kudachini. It's something that the club's done really well with over the years to have two decent keepers. I mean, George, anything to add on Kepa? I mean, how impressed have you been with him kind of since Tuchel's come in, really? Because it has been quite the transformation from those dark days under Frank Lampard for him.
Yeah, he's had such a roller coaster time at Chelsea because he came in for that big price tag and he had big shoes to fill in Thibaut, who we didn't want to see go either, who's a great goalkeeper and is in his own right. I've said on the pod many times, mate, I think he's technically, distribution wise and technically as a shot stopper better than Mendy. I just think Mendy has a bigger presence and fills the gap a lot better, and probably because of Kepa's nature makes is more prone to error in individual mistakes. But like you said, mate, it's all about how well the team's playing at the time that he's in the team. So and under Frank, when we were a bit more expansive, he did look a bit suspect, but he's been a top professional. And you look at how unprofessional some people have been, like Lukaku. He hasn't come out and moaned about being second choice. He's got on with it, and he's back in now. And I've got full faith in him. So I hope he stays, and I hope he does fight for that number one jersey because I don't think it's a completely knock-on sealed position. I think he's got, as he gets older, he's got time to fill that position for sure.
Moving on to the back three, boys. Obviously, with Chalobah out and Christensen out with a positive COVID case, I think if we're going with three at the back, two positions definitely pick themselves in Rudiger and Thiago Silva. But someone who I'm interested to get your boys' thoughts, I think deserves an opportunity with how well he's played recently. Obviously, both in all the rounds of the Carabao Cup, particularly both legs against Tottenham, he was really good. I think he's earned his opportunity to have a go in the Premier League against a higher level of opposition, and that's Malang Sarr. I think that'll be the back three tomorrow. Nick, obviously, Rudiger and Silva picked themselves. I mean, we don't need to say too much about them. They've been outstanding. What have you made of Malang Sarr and kind of the emergence of him almost? We saw him do really well at left back in a flat four. against Tottenham. And he's looked comfortable in a 3 as well. He's played in the middle of a 3 and he's also played to a side of it also. What have you made of him recently? And do you feel that he deserves a chance tomorrow?
Yeah, look, with Suarez, one of those where obviously, he played Carabao Cup games at the start, didn't necessarily stand out, came in against Brentford, was decent. And then we kind of sort of forgot about him. And I think, there was a bit of is he really good enough? But I look credit to him. I think the Spurs Carabao Cup games, he was trusted and he pocketed Harry Kane in that first game. And he was pretty good in that second game as well. Loved him winding up Giovanni Lo Celso in the second leg. That was great to watch. Look, I have confidence in him starting. I'm just interested, you obviously in this graphic here, we've kind of got him on the right of the back three.
Yeah, it might be left.
The left,
maybe.
yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens. He's obviously a left footer. Played at sort of the left back role before when I think he's played in the back three and pass he's been on the left. It'll be that's the only interesting concern is if we get Sarr in, do we play him in a back four? Because I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we maybe saw Azpilicueta on the right hand side and then we might see someone like Callum Hudson-Odoi at right wing back tomorrow or something. That would be the other option as well. Because it's genuinely a tough one. I feel like if Sarr was to play, I feel we would probably more likely see him hit in the four. But again, Matt, I could be wrong on that.
I mean, that's the dilemma, really, with this selection of the 3 at the back. I mean, if he's going to play 3 at the back, you'd expect him to be part of it. But then it's whether you go with, do you take a risk and put a Hudson-Odoi or a Pulisic at right wing back and go with Azpilicueta, or do you play slightly more defensively, potentially, and have Aspi at right wing back? That's kind of the balance you've got to strike. I mean, George, what would you do? And just before we get onto that, quick thoughts on Malang Sarr's recent performances and if you feel he deserves an opportunity in this game.
Yeah, again, boys, you've said it perfectly. I mean, personally, I think if Sarr was to play, I completely agree with Nick. I think he would be in a 4. I think our best back 3 of that 3 would be Aspi in that filling that hole where Sarr is now. But I think I agree with you, Charlie, as well. I think he does deserve his shout. I really liked how he performed in the Carabao Cup. I mean, people take it for granted and say it's a Mickey Mouse Cup, but at the end of the day, we are playing Tottenham. They did play a very strong front 3, and he bossed it. I mean, he was aggressive, was confident, and you're not going to know what substance these players are made of unless you put them up against the very best. And yes, this can sometimes hinder their confidence because they can get battered around. But I think he's someone who can rise to the challenge, as we've seen against a 3 of Song, Kane, and Lucas Moura. He didn't have too much trouble, so why not? But I agree. I think it's just the dilemma of the formation. I mean, we're going with this one for argument's sake. So if he was in this one, I probably wouldn't have him in. But I think he will play tomorrow. So,
I mean, moving on to right back, Nick. Obviously, we can slightly change this about if we need to. Presuming we're going to go with Sarr there, do you therefore feel that it's going to be Azpilicueta at right wing back, or do you feel there's an opportunity potentially for a Hudson-Odoi or a Christian Pulisic there?
I never want to see Christian Pulisic play as a wing back for Chelsea ever again. Solly March tore him apart for Brighton, and that was enough for me. Look, if we stick with the lineup we go on graphic, then Aspi will play right wing back. I think that's obvious. He will play there because Azpilicueta will play. Tuchel will play him. He's his captain. He will play. So if we stick with that team, then Azpilicueta will play on the right hand side, on that right wing back role for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what have you made of his performances recently? Because there was a kind of a spell of games like that when we went from the Zenit 3-3, the sort of the few games after that where Aspi was really quite poor, but he's actually kind of got himself back into some half decent form, and he seems to be doing pretty well for us at the moment. Obviously, I as I say, I'd rather him playing a 3 than in the wing back role, just because he's getting on a bit. He doesn't offer as much going forward as perhaps he used to do. But for my thinking with having Sarr and then Aspi there, is that probably defensively we probably want our best defenders tomorrow, given how good Man City are going forward. I would just slightly worry if the likes of, Sterling, Foden, Grealish, Jesus, etc., were bearing down on a Hudson-Odoi or a Pulisic. I think defensively that could be a problem. So that was kind of my thinking with Aspi at right back rather than one of those. But I could equally see the other option is Sarr potentially doesn't play and Azpilicueta plays, and then we put Hudson-Odoi at right wing back. But I mean, George, what would you go with? And do you think, obviously, it's pretty straightforward if Sarr starts and Aspi's probably going to play right back? Mate, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
I have to say, yeah, if we're going with this formation, I think that's the only way you can play it, because I don't think you can play a Pulisic or a Hudson-Odoi against, like you said, the caliber of what we're up against. I think that's probably the safest way to play it. So I haven't got much more to add. I think, for argument's sake, I'm sticking with this system, so I would play that.
I mean, to be fair, I would probably also argue that if on current form, I'd probably say that if Hudson-Odoi did start a right wing back, I would still maintain that I think Sarr probably would deserve to start over Azpilicueta on current form in that back three. But whether Tuchel goes with that and whether that's a popular opinion, given he's the captain, etc., I'm not sure. But I personally feel that Sarr has probably done enough to start over Aspi in that back three. But obviously, moving on to the left-hand side, very straightforward. Marcus Alonso is obviously going to play. He seems to be Chelsea fans' kind of scapegoat to go to when things don't go well. A lot of people don't want him at Chelsea anymore. Nick, what are your thoughts on Marcus Alonso, just in general, very briefly?
Yeah, look, with Alonso, I think certainly online it's like very black and white with him. There's not really much grey area, much middle ground. He's clearly been like a good servant for us. He's clearly not a bad player. What he is he's a limited player, and what he is at this stage in his Chelsea career should be a backup to Ben Chilwell, which is fine. He's not the person you want to be starting week in, week out. He clearly lacks in certain areas. Defensively, he is a liability. I mean, there was a clip, I think, on Twitter the other week where they showed Ben Chilwell tracking back and cutting out, I think, a pass when early on in the Champions League final where Man City went 0-0. And my first thought in my head was, that's Marcus Alonso, it's 1-0 Man City, because he doesn't get back and track that run. Look, he's been a good player. He's a good servant. It's one of those where I'm fine to keep him as a backup to Ben Chilwell. But at the same time, if we got someone, as we mentioned earlier, with someone like Serginho Dest, and we got him permanently, then I'd say, actually, that then might be the time to go, okay, Alonso in the summer, cheerio. Thanks for everything. We can move on. He's one of those players that, deserves respect for what he's done at Chelsea. Scored some big goals, helped us win some big trophies. But he's at the stage where if we can improve, if we can move him on, then so be it. But obviously, goes with, thanks for all you've done. And, while he's with us, we have confidence that he can do a job for us.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly. He's not bad for a backup and playing a few games here and there, but as you touched upon, he's not someone you want to be leading the charge and playing there every week. Obviously, the situation we're in now, he's having to. George, I suppose it's another big game for him tomorrow, and he needs to step up and impress. But I know, like, you're probably slightly against the grain and a little bit different to a lot of Chelsea fans. You don't mind him so much.
No, I get the points that you're saying. I think it's a love-hate relationship with Alonso, isn't it? Because we know he's limited. We know that. But I think he's also got a lot to offer. I think he's got great delivery. He's obviously very dangerous on a set piece as well. I think these games are where he probably has his worst performances, because he's up against players with incredible pace and can keep the ball close to their feet, and he gets turned in and out, so many times. But I think he is a good player, and I think we're blessed to have, again, similar to the goalkeeper situation, I think we're blessed to have someone as good as him as a cover. And we know he's a cover now. He's obviously not as good as Ben Chilwell, but I think if we were to let him go and not get a suitable replacement, I think he'd be one that we would say, should we have held on to him a bit longer? Because as long as he's happy to stay as a replacement, I think you keep him, just because. Are there really that many cover left backs better than him in the league? I would argue no. So
yeah, I mean, he's a good squad player to have. That is for sure. But yeah, I mean, he'll play tomorrow night. I mean, guys, moving on to the midfield two now, the pivot. It's obviously that N'Golo Kante is going to play in this game. He was obviously on the bench against Tottenham on Wednesday night. Came on. Not too much needs to be said about him. Nick, he's an absolute shoo-in for this game, isn't he?
Yeah, look, he's got to start if we're to have a chance. We saw how immense he was in the Champions League final against City. He is the best midfielder we have at this football club. Sorry, he's the best midfielder we have at this football club. He needs to start. We'll need him, someone like his profile in this game, breaking up play, etc. He will have a massive part to play tomorrow. He has to start. And you'd like to think maybe the Spurs, I wasn't too happy about him coming on second half against Spurs, but at the same time, he got minutes. He did actually look a bit rusty when he came on. So actually, it might have been not bad for him to come on and just get some minutes under his belt and get ready for the test for City of weekend. But yeah, for me, he definitely has to start tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I mean, George, anything to add on Kante? Obviously, as I said, he's a shoe-in, and these are the games that we really need him to step up and perform in.
He's just one that everyone else in the league in the world is jealous of, isn't he? I mean, imagine Manchester City with Kante in their midfield. I mean, it would just be a joke. So we're so lucky to have him, and I've got nothing to add. He plays every game for me. I think I'd put it out there. Other than Frank Lampard, I think he probably is the best midfielder Chelsea have had. Other than Frank Lampard, I think I can make that claim now. I think he's absolutely unbelievable. The amount of times he's just dominated games is scary. How good he is, absolutely scary.
I mean, this is where it gets kind of interesting, boys. George, I'll stick with you. I mean, what do you think? Which combination do you think is going to be best tomorrow to complement Kante? Because do we want Kovacic, who has been outstanding this season and has looked back to his best in recent weeks, someone a slightly more progressive midfield player, someone that goes forward, etc. Or do we want someone like Jorginho in there who dictates the tempo of the game a bit more, controls it a bit more? What do you think we need in that midfield tomorrow alongside Kante, and who would you go with out of those two? Because I don't think Ruben's going to start and Sam Niguez won't play either. So out of Jorginho and Kovacic, who do you feel we need? Who do you think is going to get the nod in this one?
This is a hard one for me because it depends on how you're looking to approach the game. I think, like we touched at the top of the show, without James and Chilwell as your kind of counter-attacking players, I think you do need a player that's got a bit about them when we're going through the transition into the third. So I probably would go with Kovacic. Played well, obviously, against Liverpool in that big occasion. Can carry the ball a bit. He's just got a bit more about him to link up between the middle third and the final third, I think, more than Jorginho. As much as Jorginho would probably be better for a defensive game, I don't think we need to be as defensive in this game. I think if there was a couple of points in it and we were still fighting for the title, you'd probably argue Jorginho. But for me, I think Kovacic has earned that place at the moment for his form. And yeah, I think if we go Jorginho, it's a little bit too defensive and negative. But again, you can make arguments for and against for both players. But that's just my personal opinion. I'd go Kovacic.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, just based on the fact that we need someone who can kind of take it by the scruff of the neck in midfield. It's going to be a bit progressive going forward. And obviously we can always switch things up if we need to. I mean, Nick, of the two to play alongside Kante, who would you put in there tomorrow?
Yeah, this is really tough because obviously we've seen Kante and Jorginho work superbly well in the Champions League final. We know how good it is. But I think we're just looking at Kovacic this season. We're just seeing a different player to what we've seen previously. I think his energy, what he will bring, will be huge. My only worry with Kovacic and Kante is they both like to go forward. They both do also get attracted to the ball a lot. And I think someone like Jorginho can, stay, he can sit, and he can just give us maybe a tiny bit more structure, maybe when we're without the ball. So it's a tough one to really say what I prefer. Look, I think Jorginho getting a rest again is no issue. He played a lot when Kovacic and Kante were injured, and I think he did start to feel the effects of that. For tomorrow, look, I've got no real issue out of the two who starts. It's going to be one of those in hindsight where we'll criticise the decision of goes, oh, we got it wrong. He should have done this. He should have done that. But at the time, we generally can't know who we want to play because Kovacic has been probably our player of the year this season, and he's been exceptional. And Jorginho has been pretty good as well and is a good option. There's pros and cons to playing, both players there, so it's a tough one. But yeah, I'm maybe slightly edgy with Kovacic, but I've said I've got absolutely no issue, and I'm perfectly fine with seeing Jorginho start tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I'd slightly edge Kovacic, but no issues there. Again, as you said, George, it just depends how Tuchel's going to look to approach the game, whether he wants a bit more control from the off or whether he wants to be a little bit more expansive. But obviously, all will be revealed. But yeah, Kovacic, Kante, pivot. Nick, sticking with you then, mate. The front three. I mean, I've seen things online today. Well, this is mainly Twitter, no reliable sources or anything. But I mean, do you feel Mason Mount's a shoo-in, to start tomorrow? I'm potentially saying that he possibly might not be. I just think in the last couple of games, I thought it was really poor in the second leg on Wednesday night. And his form's been a bit inconsistent so far this season. I thought obviously he had a great December where he was nominated for Player of the Month, but then this month he's not played that well. Is that a fair thing to say, or do you share that, or do you think that it's a big game and Mount will just play?
Yeah, no, look, it's a tough one. Look, obviously, we saw how much it's easy to say Mason Mount is one of those players you notice him when he's not playing. Obviously, we know it's the City game. He didn't play earlier in the season. He was out injured. We missed him. But Mount is a tough one because we said he we rate him so highly. There's a lot of expectation of him, so we're obviously going to be critical of him as well. And I think you say against Spurs, yeah, he gets the assist for Rudiger's goal, he puts in a great corner, but you didn't really notice him, and I don't think we've really noticed him in either of the Spurs Carabao Cup ties. In January, he's probably been one of the quieter players on the pitch in both those ties, along with Romelu Lukaku. To be honest, it's been interesting. So look, Mason Mount, look, if he starts, I have absolutely full confidence in the boy. He's a top player. He will be a top player for us. But at the same time, I've got absolutely no issue if Mason Mount doesn't play tomorrow, because I don't think his form has necessarily been great since December. Really, I think you said he had a really good December. He was definitely our player of the month. He was superb. But January's just not quite been at the lengths against Liverpool. Well, again, it's one of those. You feel like he's been having solidish games without doing anything outstanding, anything like really that you remember from it, noteworthy. And he's maybe just not been having the impact he could have, which is why I'm going to throw a left field one out there and say I'd start Hakim Ziyech instead of Mason Mount tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was going to say something a little bit similar. I really wouldn't be surprised if Hakim Ziyech started this game. Nick, I'll stick with you. Obviously, we'll leave that right-hand side blank for a sec. Is it cast iron that Romelu Lukaku starts as centre forward? I've seen people like Chelsea fans on Twitter saying that maybe we shouldn't start him and that Kai Havertz should play in the middle instead. I mean, I've got a feeling, my personal take on it is that if Lukaku hadn't given that interview, people wouldn't be saying that, because you wouldn't not start your £100 million signing away at Manchester City. I feel that because the interview's been given, fans are perhaps saying, oh, actually, maybe we shouldn't play him. Is it a case of, Lukaku's going to play for you, or do you think Havertz has got an opportunity to start through the middle, given the fact that he didn't actually play on Wednesday night at all?
Yeah, I wouldn't start Romelu Lukaku against Manchester City, to be honest, of the weekend. It might seem controversial, but just like the game we play, like if we're having to sit back, if we're having to counter and link up, I think Kai, as much as he is frustrating to watch, as much as he leaves us wanting more, I think he is a player. We saw against Liverpool, we actually looked quite good without Ron. We dealt without Ron fine. We still caused that Liverpool backline a lot of issues that day. And I think you look at it, I don't think we necessarily need Ron, because in my front three would have Timo Werner on the left side as well. So I think there is also that pacing behind to get on the counter. And I think it could work quite well. And, I can't remember exactly, but I think we did have Werner and Ziyech, combined quite well in that FA Cup semi-final against them last year. So it's interesting. Look, if Ron plays again, no issues. He's our top striker. I'm just slightly wary of how quiet he's been in both the Spurs games, recently. How relatively quiet. He's still been involved a bit, but still been quite quiet. how well we played without him against Liverpool. So I'm maybe slightly, and also just for pressing aspect as well. Like City, we've got to try and press them. Without Ron, we are significantly worse at the press as well. So it'll be interesting to see, how we go about it. But yeah, that's why honestly I'm tempted to start Kai tomorrow. Especially when he's rested against Spurs.
I mean, obviously, I'm going to be outvoted on this one, because I know George is probably preferred to see Havertz get the nod, so I'll put him in. I mean, George, do you agree with what Nick said there? You think that Havertz and Werner will take two of those three positions?
Nick, mate, you're music to my ears. It's nice to hear from a Chelsea fan that has some sense at last. Yeah, listen, for exactly the reasons, I can't express anything more than Nick's just said. I mean, you're looking at a game where we're going to have to do a lot of pressing and a lot of work off the ball. And Lukaku, unfortunately, is not that player. Slows everything down. And I think when we're going on a counter-attack and things need to be quick and decisive, he just slows it up. And I was going to put Werner on the left as well, just for the same reason. I think he's had some good games against Man City for that reason. They've struggled with his pace. He'll push those fullbacks out and draw them out because of his pace. And yeah, if we're going to play a counter-attacking game, which you're almost forced into that position, I just don't think Lukaku's up to it. And from what I've seen performance-wise since he's come back from the interview, I don't think he was particularly any good against Spurs. And I think the only thing that I would say that was different is that I would probably start Mount again for that attitude of off-the-ball work. I think he's got the highest work rate in the Chelsea team. And I think that is needed in a game like this, where there is a lot of just chasing possession when we're out of it. Which I don't think Ziyech's a bit weak on the ball, doesn't like to necessarily chase down players. But I also get the idea that I think Ziyech and Werner and Havertz link up better as a three than maybe Mount. So Mount would be in my three, but definitely Werner and Havertz for me. I think Lukaku needs to sit on the bench for this one, unfortunately.
I mean, I think there's pros and cons to both. I haven't got a problem with Lukaku starts, but I could equally see that why he potentially would go with Kai Havertz just because of the link up, how he did in the final against Manchester City as well. So yeah, I can see both. I mean, obviously, it's a 2-1 for Havertz, so I'll stick him in there. And I can see Timo Werner will potentially play as well. Callum Hudson-Odoi played in the week, 90 minutes, I think. So potentially won't start this one. I mean, for this right hand side, I know, George, you've gone with Mason Mount. I mean, I know you said Ziyech, Nick. I mean, do you feel that Christian Pulisic could be in with a shout to start on that right hand side, given the fact that he wasn't used either against Spurs on Wednesday night?
Yeah, there's a shout, of course. He's a shout. He wasn't really involved in the Spurs Cup ties. He was quite quiet against Chesterfield, but it's kind of hard to read into that. And against Liverpool, that goal did seem to give him some confidence. It's, I guess front three as well, that does give you that pace, that helps with the pressing. Pulisic, again, it is a great shout. Yeah, it's one of those said, George's points about Mace, again, crucial because he is very important to the press, the way we play. That high energy player, just me thinking, again, Mason's played a lot of football recently. Maybe we see him rest. And again, as frustrating as Ziyech is, we don't have a player like him. And we saw his balls against Spurs, some of the passes he was pulling off against Spurs in that first leg. He's the only player on our pitch that can do that, play those balls in behind. And those balls in behind might be crucial tomorrow. So it's a tough one. Pulisic, it's, if Mason starts, as I said, I'm fine with Mason starting. If Pulisic starts, I'm fine with Pulisic starting. If Ziyech starts, I'm kind of fine with him starting. That right-hand side, those three players have kind of, neither of them have really been in exceptional form of late. Had moments, so I'm not really too fussed who starts on the right-hand side. But yeah, Pulisic is, again, a decent shout.
I mean, to be fair, I know Mount does press well from the front, but I have to say, out of those three as well, I think Hakim Ziyech does press very well from the front as well. Obviously, not as well as Mason Mount does, but he does press from the front, Ziyech, and he's got that a little bit of something about him, as you touched on. He's got such a good delivery that not many other players on the team or in the squad have got. So we can unlock that, and we've seen him link up well with Timo Werner in the past. I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm going to agree with you, Nick. I think I like to see Hakim Ziyech out there on that right-hand side. But again, to be honest, as we've all said, I wouldn't be too fussed if Pulisic played there or if Mason Mount played there. But yeah, that's what I think there's just something a little bit different about that front three tomorrow. I don't think it's one we've seen too often. And I think it's potentially one that we could cause issues with. And then from the bench is going to be crucial as well, where we can mix it up, where we can throw on the likes of Lukaku, we can bring on Mason Mount, we can bring on a Pulisic or a Hudson-Odoi. There's plenty of options there to change things up in that attacking third. So obviously we're going to go with that lineup. I mean, I'm pretty confident on the back six, including the goalkeeper, and I'm pretty confident with the pivot as well. I suppose I think maybe one or two of these will be wrong, but not as many as perhaps we might have first thought. But as always, guys, just let us know your thoughts in the chat if you're watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments on that lineup if you agree or disagree with us. Lads, before we round out the stream then, just want to get a score prediction from yourselves before tomorrow's big game. George, I'll come to you first, mate. What are you thinking?
This is a difficult one, this one. I could see it going horribly wrong. I could see us being boring draw. I could see us winning. So let's be positive. I think because there's less on the line in this one, and I think City might take their foot off the gas just because of the 10-point lead. I'll go for a Desmond. I'll go for a Desmond 2-2.
Oh, fair. So a lot of goals, Nick. What are you thinking?
Yeah. To be, not to copy, I'll say 1-1, but I could definitely see a 2-2 happening. I think a draw tomorrow is a good shout. I'll say 1-1. We're slightly more solid and not quite as potent going forward. Yeah, 1-1.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was going to say. I'm gonna make it a full house of draws. I think 3 draws. Yeah, look, I think we've got enough in us to keep City quiet, but I don't think we've perhaps got enough in us to completely keep them out. I think they will definitely score, but I think we'll probably score as well. Yes, I'll go with the 1-1. But yeah, guys, that rounds out the Man City preview and predicted lineup stream. Thanks for tuning in live. If you did watch, really appreciate the support. Please make sure you smash a like on this video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. We're looking to grow it this year. I'd like to reach 300 by the end of this month, so we've got another 50 to go. So every little helps. So please do click that subscribe button and spread the word, guys. And also make sure you check out Nick's podcast, at Chelsea Pod. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. I've put it in the banner below and linked it in the description. So go and give it a listen and give him a follow on socials. But yeah, guys, Nick, thanks for your time. As always, mate. George, a pleasure. And hopefully the boys can get the job done at the Etihad tomorrow. And we will catch you in the match review tomorrow. So yeah, cheers, guys, and enjoy the game.